Joining us now to discuss SAB's recent interactions with the competition authorities, but also a lot of other issues, is Norman Adami, Executive Chairman of SAB in South Africa. That's of SAB Limited. Norman, good to see you in the studio, and I have to declare my interest here. I used to work with you, for you, at SAB, as now SAB Limited in South Africa. So I'm a very proud former employee of SAB, and it's a fascinating company, and it's done so well in the last 15 years in terms of expansion. Before we get to that, let's just deal with this competition issue. It's dragged out over a decade. Perhaps just set up what the problem was perceived to be and what the tribunal has now found in favor of SAB.
Well, good morning. Thank you, David, and it's a pleasure to be here. The whole competition issue and was really a number of allegations that were leveled against SAB in respect of being anti-competitive. And just to go back to the original background to this case was brought by one of the big retailers in the Eastern Cape, who alleged that he was price discriminated against and should get discounts the same as what we provide to our appointed distributors who service our rural areas, the equivalent of our depots. The case then expanded to include a number of other allegations around vertical restrictive practice, horizontal restrictive practice that were anti-competitive, as well as retail price maintenance. So all in all, they ended up with 4 allegations, but we're very pleased to inform you that on all allegations, the case was dismissed, and SAB was found to be not anti-competitive in any of its behavior or conduct on any of those dimensions.
The complaint that was lodged, was it just was he complaining due to the fact that it was only in the Eastern Cape that he felt discriminated, rather price discriminated against, or did he sort of get other distributors as well in other provinces to also come up with the same?
Well, at the end of the day, he lodged a complaint. An investigation was then mounted by the Competition Commission. This investigation started in 2004, lasted until 2007. In 2010, the tribunal, the commission then lodged the allegations with the tribunal. We were then before the tribunal. That case had then grown to more than just one individual. That was really in respect of our total distribution system and our pricing practices across the country.
Is it now been put to bed? I mean, do you see this now going away?
Well, certainly all allegations have been dismissed, and we welcome this decision. We're delighted with this decision, and we're confident, we've always been confident, that none of our practices have been in breach of the law, nor have any of our practices been anti-competitive. We've always been a company that believes in pro-consumer, that believes in pro-competition. We know that that's critical for our success.
I remember the rule at SAB, and I don't know to what extent it was actually an iron rule, but the price of beer must not go up by inflation. It must go up by less than inflation every year. So what's happened is that the real price of beer has steadily declined, hasn't it?
That's right. Over the past 40-odd years, the real price of beer has halved in South Africa. And I think that's a demonstration of our pro-competitiveness.
But as you always used to say, you've got to do both. You can reduce the cost but increase the value. Do both at the same time.
That's correct. It's a both and. And that's really what our business model is all about.
Either or is not in your vocabulary. It's both
That's right.
and. Let's talk about Graham Mackay, Norman. He died earlier this year. He had been ill. He came back to work with a brain tumor and so on. And I mean, his term at the company, it coincided as chief executive with South Africa opening up to the world, and he and SAB took advantage of that. Perhaps it's worth just asking you to reflect on the legacy of the Mackay period. He would say, and he didn't do it on his own, but it was a time where he showed great leadership and enterprise.
No, there's no doubt about that. Graham is arguably, he was the architect of what I would believe is one of the greatest South African business success stories. And he took a company that was a national champion on the tip of Africa to become the second largest brewing company operating in 5 continents around the world. And he's left a tremendous legacy. And I mean, as an individual, he's a guy with tremendous characteristics. Many people can reflect on many good things about him. I mean, he was highly intelligent in every sense of the word. he always showed great respect for everybody and trust for the people that worked for him. And I guess, you know, because he showed so much respect for everyone, I guess the world also showed so much respect for Graham.
Yeah, he had a saying that his performance review was in the share price. And if you look at the share price, I think in 1997, 8, it was around 50 Rand.
Well, even lower.
Yeah.
That's correct. And, you know, obviously today, you know, it's in excess of 500 Rand.
Yeah, so that's been... Let's just talk about that strategy and the SAB way. The company talks about the way they do things. And, I mean, a kind of shortcut to it, and this is how one thought about it. Take over a brewery in another country, send 3 guys there, a CEO, a brewer, and an accountant. And the rest, you just pick up the local operation and make them do things differently. Is that simplifying it?
Well, I think it is simplifying it, but obviously there's some fundamental truth in
But it's
that
imposing
as well.
a new way of doing things,
Yes,
isn't it?
and I mean, fundamentally, it's all about saying how do we leverage our scale, how do we free up savings in that company, eliminate the waste, invest in the marketplace, invest in our products in terms of our quality, invest in our price in terms of keeping prices low, invest in our customer service, invest in our brands and build a brand portfolio, and invest in the way we service our customers and go to market, both from a sales and a distribution and a trade marketing perspective. And that in turn will stimulate growth. That growth in turn will stimulate scale, which will enable us to create a virtuous cycle. And essentially take the best practices from around the world, apply them in the country that you're operating in, adapt to the local nuances and unique characteristics of that market, and you know, leverage that model.
Norman, David was telling me that you have a system called the People Balance Sheet. Could you tell us more about that? I found it quite interesting.
Okay, David's bringing out all the secrets, but at the end of the day, you know, we do take our people seriously. Our people are a competitive advantage. At the end of the day, it is about a people business. People make the difference. So we set a high standard in terms of the recruitment, the profile of the people that we're employing. And we put a lot of energy behind understanding the strength of our people balance sheet, if you wish.
Yep.
Understanding you know, where we might have opportunities or gaps, and how we can strengthen those opportunities in terms of building our overall capability.
Yeah, this is not something that I picked up while I was working with you, but it strikes me that I don't ever see an acting appointment at SAB. We just saw this morning, Marius Haynes from Basil Reed is retiring, so they've got an interim CEO while they look for one. I don't think SAB does interims and actings, does it?
Well, very seldom. You know, there have been the odd occasion where that's happened, but not necessarily at a senior level. And we do pride ourselves in our depth of cover, in our depth of talent within the organization. That's all to do with building that talent pipeline. You know, what we call this people balance sheet and the strategic people resourcing. So yes, it's an important element that we always have cover for critical jobs in the company.
Let's look at the last 15 years. How has the company changed since then?
15. Yes, I think at the end of the day, David alluded to that. You know, it wasn't that long ago. You know, in the early 90s, we were still effectively a national champion. We were a company that was, in fact, a diversified conglomerate in consumer goods largely. You know, we were involved in many businesses in South Africa, and that was a result primarily of sanctions. And we weren't able to invest offshore. So in the early 90s, led by Graham, we started unbundling our interests in the non-beer companies and non-beer sectors, and started then investing abroad. But bearing in mind at that point in time, we also didn't have an international brand. We didn't really have the capital. And so what we did have was a people-based strategy, if you wish. In the way we led, it was a people-based strategy that was our competitive advantage, our capability and our people. And that was the model that we led with. Obviously, we then listed in London. That enabled us to raise capital on the big London Stock Exchange. And that in turn enabled us then to raise more capital to go for even bigger, better deals.
You personally, Norman, I mean, I remember when you went to Miller in the US, that was the big one. And there were commentators who said, this is a big bottle of beer to swallow for little SAB. And it was regarded as the game changer. If you could pull that one off, then you got the critical mass. And you were the one who went to the US. What did you learn there, and how was it, having been a big player in South Africa?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, as you said, you know, when SAB acquired Miller, this was a company that had been in decline for 18 years. It was a first world operation in the most competitive market in the world. And what did SAB from an emerging market know about operating in the first world most competitive market? And yes, there were many skeptics that believed that, you know, we were doomed for failure. And it was all about how we were going to turn around Miller Brewing Company. And, you know, we were fortunate in that we were able to do that. And
you were doing it. So, yeah. I mean, what did you learn while you were in
Well, I mean, obviously I learned a lot about competition. I learned about the dynamism of the American market, the speed at which that market works, the ability to make decisions fast, the ability to be clear in terms of what your decisions are and to stick to your guns, and also to make sure that, you know, when you are choosing a path and a strategy, that you've got the people following you, that, you know, the people are with you. And certainly what was very important for us in that marketplace was that the distributors, there were some 4,000 of them, believed in what we were doing and were aligned with what we were trying to do and were committed to what we were doing. At the same time, the Miller people also needed to believe in what we were doing. So self-belief was a very important part of that.
Seems a long time ago, and there was doubt about it. Looking at the global picture now, I mean, a lot of consolidation has taken place. It was one of Graham Mackay's mantras. There is consolidation, we've got to be part of it. So there are not too many big consolidations left, are there? SAB is now a multi-continental operator.
Yes, I mean, SAB operates in 5 continents around the world. I guess if you look back 15, 20 years, the beer industry was lagging most other FMCG industries in terms of global consolidation. It was still a very fragmented business, fragmented industry. And today it's less so, it's much more concentrated. There are some opportunities, but those opportunities are fewer and far between. And therefore the focus is largely on organic growth and the ability to drive organic growth.
Looking at the established markets like Europe and the US, I mean, this is where the expertise of SAB really now gets challenged. It's building the brands, it's adding the value in an economy, in economies that aren't growing.
That's correct. And I mean, obviously in the last number of years, and also following the global crisis, the economies you know, had a tough time. And particularly Europe in particular and the US in particular, you know, we're facing a number of challenges in that regard. But as we see now, the economies are starting to emerge. You know, that we are starting to see a more positive outlook emerging in both Europe and the US.
Speaking of positive outlook, I've watched other shows on CNBC, and I know some investors and analysts are loving SAB. What can we expect from the company this year?
Well, obviously, we're talking now ahead of our results. But I do think that SAB is a player for the long term. It takes its business seriously. I do believe we have the right strategy. We focused, it's worked for us. We focused on doing that. We're investing continuously in our business. But I think very importantly, the fundamentals of the market, we believe, are strong. We've had some difficult times in our economy in recent times, recent months. But certainly fundamentally, our economy has got some strong characteristics and strength, and we believe that they will improve over time, and we are confident about our future prospects.
Final question, Norman. As Executive Chairman, you've been CEO of the operation, you're Executive Chairman, been in the US. You have to think about things that the other people in the company might not have to, like where's the economy going? What keeps you awake at night? What worries you most as a business person and as a South African?
Well, I guess at the end of the day, is everyone pulling in the same direction? Do they fundamentally understand what we're really trying to do? Are they working together? The collective self-belief, the individual self-belief, do the people believe in what they're doing, and do they understand what they're doing? I guess at the end of the day, that's a critical component. and are they energized when they wake up in the morning to do what they have to go do?